cursed second hideout. This story happened at my father's house in the countryside when I was a kid. If you want to put it politely, you could say my father's childhood home is surrounded by the beauty of nature. Another way to put it is that it's in the middle of absolutely nowhere. There are snakes, and although I've never seen them, bears as well. And when I go there for the summer holidays, it really teaches me the many meanings of the word nature. This particular story happened when I was in the 3rd grade of elementary school. Our family went to stay with my grandparents for a week during Obon. I'd play with my 2 older cousins, the older brother A and the younger brother B, from morning till night. As it got closer to us leaving, I'd get darker and darker from all the sun tanning I did. Although you would think I would have played more than enough by then, it wasn't enough. So the day before we were to go back home, I asked A and B, "Do you want to go someplace even more fun?" At A's suggestion, we decided to go to the second hideout. This second hideout was a place just as you enter the mountains, what seemed to be the remains of a building built by a religious group. The land was surrounded by wire fencing, but the entrance only had a loose chain, so it was easy for children to get inside. With nobody there anymore, it had gone to ruin. The wire fencing was falling apart, and the ground was covered in weeds. There was a parking lot and asphalt road leading out, but here were so many fallen leaves you could barely see the ground. It was a 1-story concrete building. White paint was peeling off the walls and all the doors and windows were closed with storm shutters. Each one was padlocked, and his brother got in via the back where a fallen tree had broken through his sliding door. I followed the mine, and the first thing I saw was like a small assembly room. There was a curved skylight so the entire room was bright. There was a long flat altar and an object of worship shaped like a penis. Being stupid kids, we laughed at it. We swung it around, threw it at each other, tossed it around like a rock, all sorts of stupid things. We searched the building and played for a while, but the sun was setting and it was getting dark, so we decided to go back. Just like how we entered, A went out first, but as he did, he suddenly screamed, "Look down! Whatever you do, don't look up!" Huh? I thought, but I continued to look at his feet as we tried to leave the grounds, and along the way we passed by someone. If I were to describe him in a single word, it would be blue. I only saw his feet, but they were those of an old person, an unnatural shade of blue. I think it was like those old 500 yen notes, or more recently like the same shade as Natsume Soseki on 1,000 yen notes. They stood out as something like that. I got scared thinking that someone like that was standing so close to us, so I did my best to stick to A and B as we walked. A kept repeating, "Usan, please help us," over and over like a chant. B and I were half crying, clinging to the elder A, just wishing we could get out of there. We hurried along and finally reached the exit facing the asphalt road. I wanted to run, thinking we were finally free, but as I started to lift my head once again, I screamed, "There's 2 of them! Keep your head down!" I was surprised that A noticed I'd looked up without even turning around, but I'd never heard him speak like that before, so I quickly looked back towards the ground. After walking a little while longer, I could hear the sound of the wire fencing swaying, and what appeared to be A making his way through the gap. A's feet were shaking like crazy. After A exited, he held his hand out to us still inside the grounds, but it was shaking. We soon realized why. There really was another one there. I only glimpsed the feet, but unlike the old guy earlier, this was a young woman. There was a tear in her ankle running a few centimeters upward, and the flesh behind it was blue as well. A was still saying whatever prayer it was he was chanting. Every now and then his voice got shrill, and it was probably extremely difficult for him. But having brought us younger kids here, it felt like he was doing his best for us. Both B and I clung to A, and holding hands, we could do nothing but follow behind him. When we reached the mountain trail, A was still repeating his prayer, and every now and then he'd say to us, "There should be another of them. Keep looking down." As we got close to the end of the trail, I felt a sense of security, so I looked ahead and there was nobody standing there. I was relieved. But of course, it wasn't over yet. The last person was standing about 4 meters above the trail. She was kind of blurry, floating there, with a hairstyle and kimono you don't see these days. She was blue and half smiling as she stared at us. I was so scared, I clung to A, and he soon realized what I'd seen, so he helped carry me along. As the sun disappeared, we finally reached our grandparents' house. Our worried grandfather came to greet us, asking whether I'd been injured. A explained what he saw and that he'd properly prayed as we came back. I remember the family going into an uproar. My grandfather and father ran about in a hurry, taking an offering off somewhere, and then my uncle, who came later, also went off after them. My grandmother, mother, and aunt all remained in the house. Bawling, our grandmother wouldn't let go of AB, and I had no idea what was going on. However, that night A broke out into a fever, and he started crying that he might die. Our grandmother came and took him to another room to sleep. The next morning, we all went up to a gravesite slightly up the mountainside to pray. A also came, his father carrying him on his back as his fever came down. I didn't know whose grave it was, but it was old. Quite a large stone made up the base. Perhaps it was our family's patron god. But seeing as there was no shrine, it was just a regular grave, I had no idea. I saw A again at my grandfather's funeral after we hadn't seen each other for quite some time, and we spoke. If I'd been done in by those guys, I would have gone crazy and killed you. I did everything I could not to succumb to it. You're from a branch family, so you can't be possessed. But if B had seen them, it would have been a different story, he said. Our family is cursed, I wondered, finding it all just a little bit terrifying.